Welcome back to The Critique. The material submitted today analyzes the really disturbing spread of AI deepfakes targeting the creator Eugenia Cooney.
Yeah.
It highlights the bigger dangers of this tech and, the failure of platforms to keep up.
It's a vital piece and, frankly, a tough read. It really captures the urgency of the problem. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so the primary argument here seems to need a clearer structural split.
Right.
It's trying to balance the immediate, very specific threat to the creator with the much broader systemic risk of unregulated AI.
And it details that immediate threat incredibly well. The stuff about the Love Eugenia Cooney channel, 247,000 subscribers. That's a massive operation.
It is, and the content it describes is just, it's horrifying.
It really is. The bikinis, the grotesque bit with Mr. Rogers, and that video, the one with her tied up in chains with masked figures. That detail is essential. It makes the threat feel real.
It does. But then there's the pivot. When I was reading it, I actually had to stop for a second.
You mean when it jumps from the channel to the tech side?
Exactly. You're processing the sheer awfulness of what's happening to her, and then boom, you're suddenly reading about Sora 2 and the ongoing TikTok lawsuit. The shift just feels jarring.
That's the key weakness right there. That jarring feeling. You have two incredibly urgent discussions, the current emotional trauma and the future-facing policy failure, and they end up watering each other down.
Yes, they dilute each other. The immediacy of the deepfake harassment sort of fades when you're suddenly talking about technical safeguards or legal precedent.
You're undermining both the emotional core of your argument and the logical one at the same time. You want the reader to be outraged, but also to understand the institutional failure.
And when you try to do both at once, the reader is just left feeling, paralyzed, not mobilized.
That's a great way to put it. So the suggestion is a pretty major structural resequence.
Right.
Treat the Cooney case as the powerful emotional hook. Lay out the full scale of the abuse first. And then dedicate a completely separate, structured section to the systemic threat.
So the reader can fully absorb the injustice, the personal harm, before they have to switch gears into a more logical, policy-focused mindset.
It builds a real narrative arc. Exact. And for some concrete examples of how to do that, I'd say consolidate everything about the specific AI videos, the water mukbang reference, the 5 Eugenias in bikinis with Mr. Rogers' image. Put all of that right at the top.
Make that the undeniable emotional core that justifies the whole piece.
Yeah, and then you need a clear structural mark, a subheading, a transition paragraph, something that basically says, okay, that is the reality. Now let's talk about why this is allowed to happen.
That shifts the focus from the individual creep running the channel, which is obvious, to the much larger societal and institutional failure.
And that's where you bring in the heavy tech analysis. The specifics about Sora 2, its capabilities, all of that gets reserved for that final, dedicated segment.
The tone shifts from that righteous outrage to a more measured, authoritative policy recommendation.
Right. That way the reader leaves with both that sense of urgency and a really clear, actionable critique of the system, instead of just feeling horrified and helpless.
Okay, that leads us nicely into the second point, which is about tone. The righteous indignation in this piece is, it's totally necessary. You have to convey the gravity of this. But there are moments where the language gets a little too charged.
You're talking about phrases like degenerate freaks or creepy old dudes.
Yeah. Or questioning the mental health of the person behind the channel instead of just focusing on the content they're creating.
The anger's valid, of course. It's a completely understandable reaction.
It is. But if the goal is a piece that demands legislative action, that kind of subjective language can be a distraction for a policy audience.
I do wonder, though, if you take out that heated language, do you risk losing the energy of the piece? Don't you need that fire to really feel the significance?
It's a fair question. But I think when you're trying to make an authoritative case for why laws are failing, objectivity can actually be a more powerful weapon.
Ah, I see.
The weakness is that using these kinds of dismissive labels risks alienating the very audience you're trying to persuade. It pulls focus away from the legal and technological reality of non-consensual digital fabrication.
So the critique stops being about the phenomenon and starts becoming a personal judgment of the people involved? That's a subtle but really critical shift.
Exactly. So the suggestion isn't to kill the emotional core, but to focus the descriptive language on the actions and their effect.
Trade the subjective labels for something that has more journalistic or legal weight.
Precisely. That objectivity lends real authority to the discussion about law and platform responsibility.
So for some concrete examples, Instead of freaks, you could use clinical but still very impactful terms.
Right, like targeted psychological harassment.
Or non-consensual identity manipulation, predatory online behavior.
Those terms have legal weight. They demand an institutional response in a way that just calling someone a freak doesn't.
That's a really good point. And when discussing the money side of it, the piece makes a strong point about the channel earning decent-ish money.
It does. So stick to that. Focus on the verifiable metrics, the view counts, the frequency of uploads.
And frame it as the platform's failure to enforce its own rules. That's so much more powerful than just speculating about whether the uploader gets a personal get-off on it feeling. The institutional critique is the point you want to drive home.
Yeah, and this applies to those slightly defensive tangents, too.
Like the part about the Mr. Rogers confusion?
Yeah, or the comments about the speaker gaining weight. They're understandable reactions, but they break the flow of the high-level argument. If they stay, they need to be framed very tightly as just an illustration of online hostility, not a separate point to be debated.
Keep the spotlight firmly on the institutional and technological failure.
If you maintain that authoritative, policy-focused tone, when you get to your call to action, the audience will see you as an expert voice, not just an angry one.
Okay, so let's dig into that call to action.
Right. The final section, it does a great job laying out the key problems. The lack of specific laws against deepfakes.
The old people in government not really getting the tech.
Mm-hmm. And it rightly points out that the safeguards we have now, like Sora 2's face ban, are just not enough. They're too easy to get around.
It expertly diagnoses the problem. The responsibility falls on the platforms, and the platforms are failing. But the final thesis just feels a bit broad. It's essentially, this has to stop.
And that's true. It does. But the call to action itself relies mostly on asking the audience to just talk about it, to pressure lawmakers.
Which feels a little underdeveloped, especially given how much technical understanding is shown earlier in the piece.
Exactly. The weakness is that it lacks the specificity to really mobilize a highly engaged audience who you've just spent all this time educating on the tech.
We need to move beyond just general awareness and give them a truly actionable path forward.
So the suggestion is to integrate specific, tangible policy ideas or tech solutions that the audience can actually research and advocate for.
Turn that passive awareness into active advocacy.
Let's get concrete about what those demands could look like. Instead of just general pressure, why not propose specific regulatory frameworks?
Like what, for example?
Well, you could advocate for laws that mandate the tool creators, the OpenAIs of the world, to embed permanent cryptographically verifiable watermarks into all synthetic media.
Tracing metadata so you can track non-consensual content back to its source.
Exactly. That's a technical requirement that's hard to evade. It shifts the burden of safety upstream from just the platform, YouTube, to the actual source, the AI builder itself. That's a complex, actionable idea.
I like that. And building on the platform problem, what if you challenge the current reactive moderation model?
How so?
Suggest that the audience pressure YouTube to deploy stronger, preemptive AI moderation. Algorithms tuned specifically to spot and instantly remove known toxic patterns around sensitive creators.
So you're talking about proactively flagging a combination of terms, like the system would immediately flag an upload that combines Eugenia Cooney with bikini and chains.
Precisely. That is a measurable technological demand you can make of a company like YouTube. It's using their own AI power against the people abusing it. That's fascinating. And we can do the same for the legal angle. The material already makes that great analogy to revenge porn laws,
which are all about non-consensual sharing with intent to harm.
Right. So since deepfakes are stuck in this gray area of, harassment or defamation, advocate for new laws that specifically define and punish the commercial exploitation of a digital likeness without consent.
That distinction is really potent. Commercial exploitation. It's a specific legal avenue that gets around the high bar of proving criminal intent that you often need for harassment cases.
Exactly. All of these suggestions elevate the conclusion from just a complaint about the way things are to a real roadmap for change.
It turns the technical expertise that's already in the piece into specific, achievable demands.
You got it.
So, we've covered a lot on this piece. To just briefly recap, the 3 big opportunities are, first, refining the structure.
Get that emotional hook, the full details of the abuse, right up front, before you pivot to the policy analysis.
Second, strengthening that authoritative tone. Focus the language on reportable actions, not subjective labels.
And finally, sharpening that call to action with concrete technical proposal. Advocate for specific things like tracing watermarks from the toolmakers and preemptive pattern moderation from the platforms.
This material is already such a powerful start for a critical conversation that we desperately need to be having.
Absolutely.
By integrating these high-level revisions, resequencing for impact, maintaining that objective authority, and giving your audience specific tools for advocacy, you're going to maximize its persuasive power.
We strongly encourage you to integrate these suggestions and send the material back to us for a follow-up. We're really eager to see the next draft.